There's a reason your local high street looks like every other high street in Britain, with the same chain restaurants serving the same microwaved meals from the same industrial kitchens. What I'm about to expose will change forever how you think about eating out in the UK. We're talking about restaurants charging 15 quid for a main course that costs them £2 to reheat, kitchens where nothing is cooked fresh, and food safety violations that would shock you if inspectors actually published the full reports. 9 restaurant chains are serving you frozen, processed rubbish whilst pretending it's quality dining, and millions of British families are paying premium prices for food that's barely better than a microwave meal from Iceland. This is what the restaurant industry absolutely doesn't want you knowing. Let's expose it. Coming in at number 9, Bella Italia. And this chain perfectly represents everything wrong with British casual dining in 2024, serving microwaved pasta and pizza that bears no resemblance to anything you'd find in actual Italy. Former staff members have gone on record explaining that virtually nothing at Bella Italia is cooked fresh to order, with pasta arriving pre-cooked in bags that get reheated in boiling water, sauces coming from industrial catering suppliers in massive tins, and even the pizza dough arriving frozen from central distribution. The Italian imagery and branding creates expectations of authentic Italian cooking with fresh ingredients and traditional recipes, but the reality is industrial food service optimized for speed and profit margins rather than quality or authenticity. Food safety inspection reports for Bella Italia locations have repeatedly shown concerning scores, including inadequate food storage temperatures, poor hygiene practices, and cross-contamination risks, with some branches receiving scores of 2 or 3 out of 5. Yet these poor ratings rarely impact business because most customers never check inspection results. The pricing is genuinely offensive when you understand what you're actually getting, with pasta dishes costing £12 to £15 that contain ingredients costing perhaps £2, including the reheating, essentially charging restaurant prices for food that required no actual cooking skill beyond operating a microwave and boiling water. Consumer reviews consistently mention that Bella Italia tastes like reheated frozen food, lacks the fresh flavors expected from Italian cuisine, and delivers inconsistent quality, suggesting minimal actual cooking happening in individual locations. The chain targets families with children, using bright decor and kid-friendly menus to attract parents looking for easy dining options, essentially exploiting busy families who trust familiar brands rather than seeking out genuine Italian restaurants. Environmental concerns include the packaging waste from centrally prepared ingredients, the carbon footprint of distributing frozen food to hundreds of locations, and the fact that supporting chains like Bella Italia drives independent Italian restaurants out of business. Coming in at number 8, Frankie and Benny's, the American-Italian fusion concept that delivers neither authentic American nor Italian food, but rather generic chain restaurant fare that tastes identical whether you're in Manchester or Milton Keynes. The kitchen operations at Frankie and Benny's rely heavily on pre-prepared ingredients from central suppliers, with former employees revealing that burgers arrive frozen, pasta comes pre-cooked, sauces are from industrial catering tins, and even desserts are delivered ready-made, requiring only defrosting or brief reheating. The extensive menu spanning multiple cuisines should immediately raise questions about how any kitchen can properly prepare everything from ribs to risotto to burgers to pasta, and the answer is they don't. They reheat pre-made components and assemble them on plates. Food hygiene ratings for Frankie and Benny's locations vary wildly from excellent to concerning, with some branches receiving poor scores for issues including inadequate cleaning, improper food storage, and pest control problems, demonstrating the inconsistency inherent in large chains where quality depends entirely on individual location management. The atmosphere targets families with loud American diner styling, oversized booths, and children's menus with activities, essentially using entertainment and ambiance to distract from mediocre food quality that wouldn't attract customers based on taste alone. Pricing sits around £12 to £18 for main courses, which is absurd considering you're eating reheated frozen food that required minimal actual cooking, with profit margins that would embarrass any chef who actually cares about food rather than just processing orders efficiently. The drinks markup is particularly egregious, with soft drinks costing £3 to £4 when the actual cost to the restaurant is perhaps 20 pence, and alcoholic beverages marked up 3 to 5 times retail prices. Consumer complaints frequently mention that Frankie and Benny's tastes bland, lacks fresh ingredients, and delivers the same disappointing experience regardless of location, confirming that centralized food preparation creates consistent mediocrity rather than consistent quality. Coming in at number 7, TGI Fridays. the American chain that's been serving the same loaded potato skins and Jack Daniel's sauce for decades, whilst pretending that covering everything in cheese, bacon and barbecue sauce makes up for using frozen ingredients and microwave cooking. The kitchen at TGI Fridays operates more like an assembly line than a restaurant, with staff trained to reheat, assemble and plate pre-prepared components, rather than actually cook food from scratch, and former employees have described the soul-destroying reality of cooking without ever using actual cooking skills. The famous Jack Daniel's glaze that appears on multiple menu items comes in massive containers from suppliers, mixed in industrial facilities and distributed to locations, meaning the signature flavor you're paying premium prices for is literally the same sauce available to any restaurant willing to buy from the same supplier. Food safety concerns at TGI Fridays have included multiple locations receiving poor hygiene ratings for issues including inadequate temperature control, poor cleaning standards, and improper food handling, with some branches failing inspections multiple times before making necessary improvements. The portion sizes are genuinely ridiculous, designed to make customers feel they're getting value whilst actually just encouraging overconsumption and food waste, with single dishes containing more calories than most adults should eat in an entire day. The pricing is insulting when you understand the food cost versus charge, with appetizers like loaded potato skins costing £8 to £12 when they're made from frozen potato skins, pre-cooked bacon bits, industrial cheese sauce and sour cream, ingredients costing perhaps £1.50 but sold for 8 times that amount. The atmosphere is aggressively American, with memorabilia covering walls, loud music, and staff forced to wear ridiculous amounts of flair, creating an environment that's more theme park than restaurant and distracting from the mediocre food quality. Consumer health advocates point out that eating regularly at TGI Fridays contributes directly to obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, given the excessive calories, sodium, and unhealthy fats in virtually every menu item.
Coming in at number 6, Harvester, the salad bar chain that tricks customers into thinking unlimited salad bar access makes up for mediocre main courses that arrive frozen from central distribution and get reheated in individual locations. The salad bar itself, whilst popular with families, raises significant food safety concerns because self-service buffets are notorious vectors for cross-contamination, with customers touching serving utensils, breathing over food, and occasionally contaminating ingredients, creating risks that many people don't consider whilst piling lettuce onto plates. Former Harvester staff have revealed that the main courses, including steaks, chicken and ribs, are prepared centrally, vacuum-packed and distributed frozen to restaurants where they're reheated using combination ovens, water baths and microwaves, meaning your cooked-to-order steak was actually cooked days or weeks ago, then reheated when you ordered. The quality of meat used by Harvester is noticeably poor compared to proper restaurants or butchers, with steaks often being tenderized mechanically or chemically to make lower-grade cuts seem more palatable, and chicken that's been bulked up with water and additives to increase weight and improve texture of inferior birds. Food hygiene ratings for Harvester locations show concerning patterns, with multiple branches receiving poor scores for inadequate cleaning, improper temperature control, and pest problems, demonstrating that the salad bar concept creates additional hygiene challenges that some locations struggle to manage properly. The pricing seems reasonable at £10 to £15 for main course plus unlimited salad bar, but this apparent value disguises the reality that you're paying restaurant prices for frozen, reheated food plus access to a self-service salad bar that costs Harvester perhaps 50p per customer in actual ingredient costs. The atmosphere targets families with children, using the salad bar as entertainment and distraction that keeps kids occupied whilst parents wait for mediocre main courses, essentially using a gimmick to compensate for food quality that wouldn't attract customers on merit alone.
Coming at number 5, Toby Carvery. And whilst the concept of traditional British roast dinner available daily sounds appealing, the reality is industrial-scale food production that bears minimal resemblance to proper home-cooked Sunday roast. The meat served at Toby Carvery is roasted in massive quantities in central kitchens, then distributed to locations where it's kept warm for hours in heated cabinets, meaning by the time it reaches your plate, it's been sitting at warm temperatures breeding bacteria and drying out for indeterminate periods. The vegetables are predominantly frozen industrial catering varieties
varieties rather than fresh, boiled or steamed in bulk, and kept warm in bain-maries where they gradually turn to mush and lose whatever nutritional value they originally contained. The Yorkshire puddings that should be light and crispy arrive frozen from suppliers and get reheated, resulting in the distinctive soggy, dense texture that bears no resemblance to proper Yorkshire puddings made fresh from batter. Food safety is particularly concerning with buffet-style service where meat sits at warm temperatures for extended periods, creating ideal conditions for bacterial growth, and self-service allows customers to contaminate serving utensils and potentially spread illness between diners. Former staff members described the reality of working at Toby Carvery, including being pressured to keep meat out too long to avoid waste, reheating leftovers for the next service, and cutting corners on hygiene when management prioritizes speed and cost savings over food safety. The pricing of £8 to £12 for unlimited carvery seems reasonable until you understand that the actual food cost is perhaps £2 per person, with cheap cuts of meat roasted in bulk, frozen vegetables and packet gravy creating enormous profit margins whilst customers believe they're getting traditional value. The atmosphere attempts to evoke traditional British pub dining with dark wood and coaching-in imagery, but this nostalgic branding disguises the industrial reality of the food production happening behind the scenes. Consumer reviews frequently mention that Toby Carvery has declined significantly in quality over recent years, with smaller portions, lower quality meat, and more obviously frozen vegetables, suggesting that cost-cutting has progressively worsened the already questionable food standards.
Coming at number 4, Wetherspoons. And whilst the rock-bottom prices make it tempting, understanding what you're actually eating and how it's prepared should make you seriously reconsider that £5.99 breakfast. Every meal at Wetherspoons arrives frozen from central distribution, with staff trained to microwave, grill or deep-fry pre-prepared components rather than cook actual food. And former employees describe kitchens as reheating stations rather than cooking environments. The famous cheap breakfast is made possible through using lowest-grade ingredients available, including reformed sausages containing 50% meat and 50% filler, bacon that's been mechanically recovered and reformed, and eggs that come pre-cracked in cartons rather than being broken fresh from shells. Food hygiene ratings for Wetherspoons pubs vary dramatically, with some locations scoring excellent whilst others receive concerning ratings for issues including dirty kitchens, improper food storage, inadequate pest control, and staff not following proper food safety procedures. The business model relies on volume and speed rather than quality, processing hundreds of meals daily through kitchens designed for efficiency rather than proper cooking, meaning staff are pressured to reheat and serve food as quickly as possible regardless of whether proper temperatures are reached or food is properly cooked. The alcohol pricing seems incredibly cheap until you understand that Wetherspoons negotiates bulk deals, buying lower quality beer and spirits in enormous quantities, and the cheap drink prices are partly subsidized by the high margin food sales from microwaved frozen meals. The atmosphere varies between locations but generally involves sticky carpets, questionable toilets, and clientele that ranges from pensioners having cheap lunch to groups getting drunk at 9 in the morning, creating an environment that's more about cheap consumption than enjoyable dining. Consumer health concerns are significant, given that eating regularly at Wetherspoons means consuming excessive sodium, unhealthy fats, and processed meats that are conclusively linked to increased cancer risk, cardiovascular disease, and other serious health problems. The environmental impact is substantial, with everything arriving wrapped in industrial catering packaging, enormous amounts of waste generated by single-use packaging and disposable cutlery, and the carbon footprint of distributing frozen food to nearly 900 locations across the UK.
Coming in at number 3, Nando's. And whilst the peri-peri chicken has a cult following among British diners, the reality behind the marketing is frozen chicken from industrial suppliers, sourced from bottles, and prices that make no sense when you understand the actual food costs. The chicken served at Nando's arrives frozen from massive poultry suppliers, having been raised in intensive farming conditions with questionable animal welfare. And whilst Nando's claims high welfare standards, investigations have revealed problems at supplier farms, including inadequate cleaning, improper food storage temperatures, and cross-contamination risks, particularly problematic given that chicken requires careful handling to prevent salmonella and other bacterial contamination. The queuing system, where customers order at counter then collect their own cutlery and sauces, is essentially cost-cutting disguised as casual dining culture, reducing staff requirements whilst maintaining the same prices you'd pay for full table service elsewhere. The atmosphere cultivates a hip, casual image with Portuguese-inspired decor and loud music, creating the impression that you're eating somewhere cooler and more authentic than you actually are, distracting from the reality that you're eating frozen chicken with bottled sauce at premium prices.
Coming in number 2, Pizza Express, once respected for bringing proper pizza to British high streets, but now representing corporate ownership, prioritising profit extraction over quality, with frozen dough, pre-made sauces and prices that are genuinely insulting given the ingredient costs. The pizza dough at Pizza Express arrives frozen from central production rather than being made fresh in restaurants, as the branding and atmosphere suggests. And whilst the dough recipe might be decent, frozen dough cannot match properly made fresh dough for texture, flavor, and rise. The toppings are predominantly pre-prepared, including pre-sliced pepperoni, pre-sliced mushrooms from catering suppliers, and cheese that arrives pre-grated rather than being freshly grated from blocks, all designed to reduce labor costs and increase consistency at the expense of freshness and quality. Food safety issues have plagued multiple Pizza Express locations with concerning hygiene ratings, including inadequate cleaning, improper food storage, and cross-contamination risks, demonstrating that the casual dining chain has struggled to maintain consistent standards across hundreds of locations. The company's financial troubles, including massive debts and ownership changes, have resulted in progressive cost-cutting that's noticeably reduced quality over recent years, with smaller pizzas, fewer toppings, and lower quality ingredients as accountants prioritize profit margins over the food quality that originally built the brand. Consumer reviews increasingly describe Pizza Express as disappointing, overpriced, and inconsistent compared to independent pizzerias or even supermarket pizza, suggesting customers are recognizing that paying premium prices for frozen dough and catering supplies doesn't make sense.
Coming in at number 1. Prezzo. And this takes the top spot because it represents everything that's wrong with British casual dining in 2026, serving microwaved Italian food at premium prices whilst the company's financial problems and ownership changes have driven quality into the ground. Prezzo operates on the same frozen food model as other chains, but has been particularly aggressive about cost-cutting, with former staff describing pressure to keep labor costs minimal, use ingredients past their best, and serve food that's been reheated multiple times when customer numbers are low and food would otherwise be wasted. The menu spans Italian cuisine from pasta to pizza to risotto to seafood, and this breadth should immediately raise questions because proper Italian restaurants specialize rather than attempting everything. And the answer is that Prezzo doesn't actually cook most of this food, but rather reheats pre-prepared components from industrial suppliers. Food hygiene ratings for Prezzo locations include concerning numbers of poor scores for inadequate cleaning, improper food storage, pest problems, and cross-contamination risks, with some locations receiving scores of 1 or 2 out of 5, yet continuing to operate whilst customers remain unaware of the problems. The pricing is genuinely shocking given the quality, with pasta dishes costing £13 to £16 that are literally reheated from frozen bags, pizza with pre-made frozen dough and catering supplier toppings, and risotto that arrives pre-cooked and gets reheated with additional stock, none of which requires actual cooking skill, but all charged at premium restaurant prices. The company's financial troubles, including administration, closures, and ownership changes, have created operational chaos affecting food quality, staff morale, and customer experience, with employees describing impossible situations trying to serve decent food whilst management cuts every cost possible to survive. The atmosphere attempts Italian restaurant sophistication with dim lighting, Italian music, and formal table settings, but this facade cannot disguise that you're eating frozen, reheated food in a failing chain restaurant desperately trying to survive. Consumer complaints are remarkably consistent across locations, describing tiny portions, poor quality ingredients, obviously microwaved food, slow service, and prices that make no sense given what arrives on plates, suggesting systematic problems rather than isolated bad experiences.
Trusted restaurant number 2, your local independent Italian restaurant. For genuine Italian food cooked by people who actually care about quality and reputation, your local independent Italian restaurant run by Italian families represents infinitely better value and quality than any chain. Independent Italian restaurants typically make pasta fresh daily or use quality dried pasta from Italian suppliers, create sauces from scratch using fresh ingredients rather than industrial catering tins, and employ chefs with actual cooking skills rather than reheating stuff. The menu at Quality Independence is usually focused and seasonal, reflecting what ingredients are available and what the kitchen does well, rather than attempting everything from pizza to seafood, which indicates genuine cooking rather than reheating frozen components. Food safety standards at established independent restaurants are generally excellent because reputation matters enormously, and one bad inspection or food poisoning incident can destroy decades of building business. The pricing is often comparable to or even cheaper than chains when comparing like-for-like quality, and you're getting genuinely cooked food made by skilled chefs rather than paying premium prices for microwaved frozen meals. Supporting independent restaurants keeps money in local economy, maintains high street diversity, and encourages actual cooking skills rather than corporate chains extracting profit whilst serving industrial food. Trusted restaurant number 1, local family-run restaurants regardless of cuisine. The absolute best restaurants in Britain are the family-run establishments, regardless of cuisine, whether that's Pakistani, Chinese, Turkish, Greek, British, or any other culture, where food is cooked with genuine care and reputation matters more than corporate profit margins. Family-run restaurants typically source ingredients carefully, cook everything fresh to order rather than reheating frozen components, and have chefs who've learned cooking through generations of family knowledge rather than corporate training manuals about reheating frozen food. The owners are usually working in the restaurant, directly accountable for quality and customer satisfaction, meaning they cannot hide behind corporate structures when food is poor or service fails. Food hygiene standards at established family restaurants are generally excellent because one bad inspection threatens everything they've built, whereas chain restaurant locations can fail inspections, then continue operating under corporate protection. The pricing reflects actual costs rather than corporate profit targets, meaning you're paying for ingredients and labor rather than shareholder dividends and executive bonuses. Finding quality family restaurants requires trying places, reading reviews, and asking locals rather than defaulting to familiar chains, but the effort rewards you with genuinely good food that chains cannot match.
So there you have it, 9 UK restaurant chains you should avoid in 2026. From Italian chains like Bella Italia, Prezzo and Pizza Express, serving frozen pasta and pizza whilst pretending it's authentic, to American-themed chains like Frankie and Benny's and TGI Fridays, reheating frozen components and covering everything in cheese, to British chains like Harvester, Toby Carvery and Wetherspoons, serving industrial catering food at prices that make no sense given the quality. The common thread is frozen food from central distribution, minimal actual cooking happening in restaurants, aggressive cost-cutting driving quality down, and marketing that disguises industrial food service as proper dining. These chains exploit customer trust in familiar brands while serving food that's barely better than supermarket frozen meals at 5 times the price. The two options actually worth your money are independent Italian restaurants and family-run establishments regardless of cuisine, where food is cooked fresh by people who care about reputation and quality. Every time you choose independent over chains, you're supporting actual cooking, keeping money and local economy, and encouraging food culture rather than corporate profit extraction. The restaurant industry has convinced British diners that chain restaurants are reliable, safe choices, when actually they're reliable disappointments serving frozen, reheated rubbish at premium prices. If this has changed how you'll choose restaurants, brilliant. Next time you're deciding where to eat, skip the familiar chains, find independent restaurants, and experience the difference between genuinely cooked food and industrial catering disguised as dining. Thanks for watching. Choose wisely, and remember, the best food in Britain doesn't come from corporate chains with massive marketing budgets. It comes from independent restaurants cooking real food with actual care and skill.